Apples and bananas are by far the best fruits. Now that we have settled that argument, let's talk about games that were on Kickstarter that I passed that I thought were more worth waiting until retail. Now, that's not a big group because a lot of games on Kickstarter, I don't feel like there's a good in between. It's either you're going to get it on Kickstarter, you're going to get all the exclusives, and you're probably not going to want to pick it up at retail later at all, or you're going to pass on it altogether because it's of no interest to you. There are few and far between that do fit that, but especially with my interests, my own personal taste in games, that is not a wide market. For some people it is. Some people, they say I bypass Kickstarter unless it's something truly outstanding, truly special. Me personally, I do a little bit of both. I honestly end up backing a lot on Kickstarter, and I either end up buying secondhand or trading secondhand for the stuff that I don't get. But I think there are some games that I am seriously looking at in terms of a retail purchase that I passed on Kickstarter for various reasons. And most of those reasons are very similar. They deal with exclusives, they deal with price, they deal with just what you're actually getting that I just don't want or need. A lot of what Kickstarter versus retail comes down to is exactly just that, those three main tiers. Price, exclusivity, extra stuff that I don't want. How do those three balance? So, with knowledge of those three things, let's take a look. I chose 7 games. It's an odd number. I like the number 7. So, 7 games that I am looking at possibly picking up at retail depending on how they fare. The added benefit of doing it this way, obviously, is that other people are going to get it. There's going to be reviews. There's going to be mass opinion that you can sort of cycle through to see whether or not it's more for you. And I think there's also benefit that if it turns out to be good for you and not good for someone else, there's a chance that you could get that Kickstarter copy for more of the retail price. It's always worth asking. So, let's start with number 7. Number 7, now this is Sakura Arms. I've talked about this in a couple other videos. Level 99 games, they have all these 2-player tactical skirmish games. They seem to have cornered the market on them, to be very frank. Except for Yomi, they have the other 2 top one-on-one battlers. You've got BattleCon and you've got Exceed. And when people are recommending games, those are the 3 that always come out. Now, the 4th that I've seen is Sakura Arms, but Sakura Arms was extremely limited because it was a Japanese import that people were taking and translating and sticking in sleeves with the English text to be able to play it. And AEG did an import of an English version, almost a decade ago, but the copies are few and far between, and it's just really not widely available at all. So when Level 99 announced that they were going to be, taking this property over and really giving it the fine-tuning treatment, people like me were relatively excited. The problem was the Kickstarter campaign as a whole was really more of a retail price, and they decided to go with all 18 characters. They divvied them up between, 3 boxes of 6 characters each. Now with this game, you need 2 characters per team. You take all of their cards and you choose 10 cards from the 2 players total, the 2 goddesses total, because they each have like 10 cards. So you take a combination of those 10 cards and you do deck construction, which makes it extremely different than all of the other 3 games on that list that I mentioned. None of them are deck construction. All of them are pre-built decks that you are mastering, that is part of the meta to know what the other person has. In this game, you don't know what the other person has, so games can be won or lost pre-game. There is some tactical, but there is a larger element of strategy in this game than the others. But I think it was something like $34 was the MSRP that they were saying, and $29 was the Kickstarter price for 1 box. $89 was the price for all 3 boxes. There was $11 shipping, so $100 for all 3 boxes for the complete set of Sakura Arms with an 8-card promo pack that I'm not even sure, because I'm not familiar enough with the game to know how important or how worthy of missing out or not on that it is. So I was tempted to get just 1 box, but then I'm still paying almost the same shipping costs, like $9 or $11 on a $29 game. Level 99 Games has stuff. I mean, their Christmas sale just happened, or Black Friday sale just happened, where they offered 25% on like everything on their site. So I'm looking forward a year from now saying, can I get one or all three of these for, 25% off whatever their MSRP is, which probably with free shipping will get it less. Or if they end up really smashing it, out of the ballpark, is it going to show up at other distributors and online game stores where I can, fit it under free shipping there? So for me, it was an easy pass because I also have I have Yomi, I have BattleCon, kind of sitting right there. And I don't need it. I don't have a gap in my collection that I need to fill with that. So from both of those aspects, it was an easy pass. But it's one that I'm going to be highly looking at and trying to get, maybe even trading for at the retail level. Number 6 was similar. I mean, both of these are relatively recent, and I think both of these being recent, but interestingly enough, they are both for different reasons. This one is Veiled Fate. I covered this in a video too, talking about just my opinions on Kickstarters. And I really like the concept of the game. More of a tactical social deduction type game. But the problem was the price point was just huge for this social deduction type game. And I think the mainstay pledge that they were really talking about, they did 2 under it, which were in the middle of the campaign, they said, well, we hear people that you don't like the fact that we're maximizing, we're doing the chip theory games route with our components, maximizing everything that they possibly can. Don't get me wrong, I love better components, but it was costing $89 for the pledge point with some little miniatures with a tactical social deduction game that I don't think really needed them in the first place. And they were saying, okay, well, we'll cut down on the component quality, and here's a $65 pledge level and a $49 pledge level. I still looked at that, especially with shipping added onto that, as over $60 for a social deduction tactical game. And I didn't think there was really any exclusivity on any of the non-gameplay components. I could be wrong on this. Let's just clarify. Let's pull up the Kickstarter page right now. So they've got a gold stamp on the box that's exclusive. There's the cover that's exclusive. There's miniatures. There's that sort of stuff, but it doesn't look like there's any actual gameplay exclusives. So I guess this is one of those things that I go, what's the incentive for me to back it now? The main incentive seems to be either get this super duper over the top high quality deluxe version and get it maybe a little earlier. And I've never been one of those people where the get it earlier vibe really is a motivating factor whatsoever. Even as someone who now might be putting out reviews and previews, that really doesn't do it for me. When I'm paying for my own money. The other reviewers who are, not having to pay for it or getting, production copies or media copies, yeah, they get it first. And so for them, it really does make a difference. For me, it really doesn't right now. And maybe that'll change. Maybe I'll become one of those people who puts out more when I, strike it rich and I'm putting out, production copies from media and, people are wanting to get my opinion. Until then, I can't pay, $40 extra for the extra components and the exclusivity that is jading it early. That is a whole nother game, plus shipping, like something like Cascadia. So they said they're not even putting the $49 pledge level out. It's Veiled Fate Light. I think I'll be able to pick it up and trade because I think you're going to have people that back this, and what they want their group to like or what they think their group will like is not necessarily what their group will actually like playing or have any interest in playing in the first place. So I think there's going to be a fair number on the secondary market and, even some of those lower pledge levels. So that's how I would probably, again, try and get a copy of this game. But I didn't see anything, again, that made me want to necessarily say, I need this during Kickstarter. I need this now. I need to fund it now, or I'm missing out. I'm not going to screw up the numbering tonight. This is number 5. Number 5 is Intrepid. If you're not familiar, Intrepid was on Kickstarter, let's see, what was it? Back in July. And this was an asymmetric narrative type co-op game of surviving on the International Space Station. And you know me at this point, if you've watched any of my videos, I like hard co-ops. But it left me feeling very dry in terms of the gameplay, having watched a couple gameplay videos and heard some thoughts from people who had played it, as well as the price point. The price point was $60 MSRP, they said, and at that pledge level, you're also getting the included critical game expansion, mission critical game expansion, which they say is going to have another MSRP of $30. So the MSRP for this game is going to be $90, they're saying, plus all stretch goals. That's a lot. And I didn't think it was necessarily bang for your buck in terms of the content that you were getting. And don't get me wrong, it seems like a very high quality game, but I think, again, this is going to be one that's very hit or miss given the theme, given the manipulation of some of these areas. This one also struck me as, I don't think it was necessarily quarterbacky, because I think each person is going to have too much going on to necessarily do that with other people. But this one struck me, unlike some of the other ones that I have been more piqued by, as more solo multi-handed than necessarily multiplayer. And that's a solely personal opinion, but nothing on it said this is what you need to get. It also sort of crossed in that line for me between becoming the more tactically adaptable cooperative game and the more Euro-style, deep strategy, long-term planning type of game. And that's, I guess, what I mean by the dryness mechanically. That's also probably backed up by the fact that this one is different in the sense that you're doing dice placement, which is a crux of more than a few worker placement games out there, like Grand Austria Hotel, Teotihuacan. It's lost me on that element of things. This is the game that I guess I would say I would want to try before I would buy. I don't think I would even necessarily trade for this one before I could see a couple playthroughs with multiple groups and or get my hands on it from someone locally to try it out in the first place. Because I just don't get the feeling that this is necessarily going to be quite my style of cooperative game. I would like to be wrong because the theme is very interesting. The theme is realistic in nature. As real as anyone's going to be an astronaut around here, but you know what I mean. It's more grounded in its mechanics, in actuality, and they've purposefully done that to make it more thematic as well. But ultimately, I looked at this and I said, between the unsureness of the actual gameplay and the relatively higher cost in terms of $60 plus shipping for, even though you were probably now looking back on it, getting a pretty decent deal, I just couldn't pull the trigger as well, given that I have so many other similar games. So ultimately, I'm going to keep my eye on it. It's still on my wish list. And so we'll just kind of see what happens. So number 4 is Red Raven Games' Sleeping Gods. This is the Ryan Laukat campaign narrative masterpiece to date. And you're taking your crew on the boat around in the ocean, doing your sort of Tales of Arabian Nights with a little bit of, action, adventure, narrative, RPG-ish, leveling up abilities and characters, and just kind of seeing what happens in more of a sandbox open world. I've had my reservations. The other games that Red Raven Games has put out, they are very much more Euro-style worker placement with some narrative elements, and they have just not clicked with me at all. Above and Below, just not my style of game. And this was an extension of those previous brands into that RPG-esque sandbox world. But watching Rado's gameplay just, again, did not enthrall me and grip me in the tactical, thematic, Amerithrash type of sense. It was really, again, more like the previous game in Intrepid, where it was still seemingly a little bit more Euro-ish in its style. And then again, this is a personal interpretation because there was a lot of moving parts on the ship that you're coordinating and trying to take care of and manage all while exploring. And it's going to be at retail. I think you're getting an extra expansion for free. So nothing like completely screwing up a video and making a fool of yourself. I'm apparently good at that. So I'm going to edit this in to the video so it can actually be right in the video. So I screwed up Sleeping Gods. It includes the dungeon expansion along with the Tides of Ruin expansion. And so my evaluation for the money standpoint is all wrong. I stand by my opinion on Sleeping Gods that I'm waiting for retail just because of the campaign game nature and because of the types of checks that are in the game that you have to do. I just watched Rado's video and I'm just not a big fan of it in general compared to some of the other type of campaign games out there. So for me, I guess it wasn't what I was expecting when I thought of a campaign sandbox type game. So it was a lot of money to spend in that regard. And I guess I can't justify it. And you're getting 2 expansions at that higher pledge. And US backers are paying between $15 and $20 shipping. So from a US side of things, I think that's good. I guess the one thing I didn't talk about in the video was that, especially if you're outside of the US, sometimes it is much cheaper to get these on Kickstarter. So I think I am guilty of this as well, of being US centric when I'm thinking of my videos and the production and the cost of these games. Overall, though, it's still on my wish list. It's down on my wish list, but I think it's a game that I'm gonna need to see. I mean, I guess when you talk about those expansions and those other things, like Tides of Ruin, again, I guess I'm not anymore a completionist when it comes to these games. It comes with a bunch of different expansions. I think there was something like, again, correct me if I'm wrong, seven dungeons or something additional like that around there, and the amount of content that is just massive. And I'm really trying to take a step back on some of these bigger games and say, do I need all of that extra content because I'm never going to get to it and it's going to take up shelf space? And I guess I'm being a bit hypocritical because there are definitely games where I'm not looking at that, but I'm also just sort of ignoring it. And there are other games where that's factoring into a big decision about whether or not I want it, sort of the all in or nothing. And that's something I struggle with on the Kickstarter scene as a whole about, missing out. But I've gone that way a little bit more about piecemealing it. So hopefully it'll be a little bit better. Now, number 3, this is very similar. I might as well just stay in this view because I'm going to do the exact same thing with this one that I just did with Sleeping Gods. And I've already looked at this one because this one is actually one I am very serious about picking up because I have a super interest in it. This is Adventure Tactics. This is probably, per the Kickstarter page, per the description of it in the first place, the closest thing out there to what was thought of as Final Fantasy Tactics. So it's a co-op tactical game for 1 to 5 players. They're taking the grid that is, Final Fantasy Tactics, what they're known for, and you're taking your classes, and just like Final Fantasy Tactics, there is this branching RPG element where you're taking levels in certain classes, and how you combine the levels of the mage with the rogue or the fighter with the rogue turns you into a very specific class. So it's not just 2 fighter, 2 rogue like it is in D&D. 2 fighter and 2 rogue might get you, a special type of paladin, or 2 mage and 2 rogue might get you a special type of sorcerer or some variant thereof. And they've tried to encapsulate this. Now let's talk about this for a second. $75 for the main pledge level, $90 for the base game plus the class pack 1, $100 for the retail level, but $140 for getting a set of painted miniatures. If you don't care about painted miniatures, you don't care about any of these pledge levels, they're, offering them a whole bunch of times. So basically you're looking at $90. And so the $90 here gets you the 3 additional classes, it gets you the extra mini, and it gets you all the Hero Pack stretch goals. And I believe there was a couple stories that some authors were going to put in here. It comes with standees instead of miniatures. For the most part, here you go. the exclusive booklet of single session side quests written by guest designers, and a print version free for Kickstarter backers with availability for purchase post campaign. So that's the exclusive. That is the only exclusive here. Speaking of adventure tactics, I still feel as though it was something, even though it's a small creator, if it was going to be good, I think I feel like it would be picked up at retail. And it looks like the finished product is now in some backers' hands, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. I had a lot of concerns, like several other people that were raised during the campaign, about it being a little bit too light, or I guess more, a different way of putting it instead of saying it's too light was that it's less tactical, and it's just a slugfest. And I just want to see it gameplay wise out on the wild first, so I can say, okay, is this actually for me or not? I just couldn't conceptualize it very well during the Kickstarter campaign. There were very few videos. And so I think the concept is really good, and the barrier to entry plays to its strength, but there needs to be another level of tactical gameplay beyond just the entry level. And I just want to see if that's there. And because I couldn't convince myself it was there, and because in combination with that, and the price, and the lack of exclusives to say, fear of missing out, I just said I'm going to wait for retail for it. So, again, it's high on my wish list. It's definitely on there. As you can see, I've looked at it on Card House, and I've looked at it on Game Nerds and several other sites. So it's going to be on my radar. I'm going to keep it there. If it ends up being as good as a lot of people hope it is, I will probably end up getting it at retail. Or, frankly speaking, if I have to pay a premium on getting some of these games because there is extra content, I'm okay with that. But I guess I'm not okay with risking a lot in terms of questionable gameplay fit for me nowadays. So there you go. Number 2 is going to be relatively brief because we've already covered the concepts behind it. And if you know much about this, you've already probably dug into it or completely avoided it. And that's Oath by Cole Worley. And Oath is, I don't want to say the spiritual successor to PAX Premier, but it was the next big game that they put out after the PAX Premier reprint. And it is more of this sandboxy, take that type of campaign, non-campaign type of game, where repeated plays are going to offer you more because of the carryover between one game to the next and the meta working in that way. Oath, the formal name, is Chronicles of the Empire in Exile. The base pledge was $90 plus shipping, and what you're getting is the deluxe component set as well as the session journal, and I think the deluxe component set again included those metal coins. So you're talking well over $100 for this game. Now the big thing with this was, is this going to copy PAX Premier, where it's really not widely available on the secondary market or secondary level, and so the price is going to stay that high? How available is it going to be to get? If you want it right away, like PAX Premier or when Root came out, you were paying a premium. But if you're willing to wait, for a second or third printing, wait 6 months or a year, this is a game I think you could get, for significantly less than $90. Because again, I don't need metal coins or a journal. As much as I love this game is the second highest game on my wish list on this list. And this game is high on my wish list overall of things that I have not backed or bought. It is on the Board Game Geeks, it is a 1 or 2. It is a must-have / love to have right in between there. So it is really high. When I say I want this game, I want this game. But I was not willing to pay the extra to get it sooner and to guarantee my copy on the first print. And so I'm less concerned about the gameplay. I think this gameplay actually suits myself and my group more than Root does, given the highly asymmetrical nature of Root, where you have to know your own faction as well as the other factions as well as your own, just to be able to do yours the best you can, but also to know what they need to do in order to prevent them from being able to do it in the first place. This is more take that. This is more swingy. This is less strategic and more tactical, which is exactly what I love. And that was a lot of the big criticism, that people were looking for more something like PAX, where it is more strategic and there is less swinginess in terms of, oh, wow, that's a huge, massive move. This is the type of game I think that I ultimately probably am going to wish PAX Premier is. But I'm going to be patient with it because I know that I do not need it right away, and I will save myself money, or I can get it traded for on the secondary market because, again, of those reasons of people who are thinking it's going to be more like PAX and it's not. So that's why it's probably within the top 10 games on my wish list total, but it may end up coming to me a lot later than some of the other ones on that list. And I've made my peace with that. But that is why, again, for those reasons and the other reasons I've mentioned in combination already on the things on this list, why I passed on it. Number 1 on this list is probably right up there between a 1 and a 2 on the wish list for Board Game Geek for me, and that is Role Player Adventures. A standalone, co-op, narrative board game using dice and dice manipulation with a heavy emphasis on the campaign and the ramifications. This is sort of, I think, what I wanted Role Player to be in the first place. And Role Players felt too samey in terms of plays each time I played it. I mean, the last time I played it before we ended up trading it away or selling it, whichever I did, I can't remember. My wife and I literally both got the same score. It was just so systematic and so little variation in what you need to do. I'm going to do this. I have to do this. I need to get this. I need to get this. It was straightforward in that sense that neither of us felt that it was fun, and it was more mathy at that point. And that's not to say it was a bad game. It's a great game. But I could not see myself wanting to pull it out in front of other stuff. And so when I went into this game and this Kickstarter campaign, I had high hopes for this. I mean, price point was $125 with the expansion. If you're getting the $125, though, it was costing you another $17 in shipping. So you're at $142 already, or $117 if you're getting just the base. Keith, the designer, says on the Kickstarter page that that's going to be $20, the 100 or the 125 is going to be $20 below the retail. I can't believe that the core of this game is going to be $120 and that the core plus the expansion is going to be $145 when you don't even have Gloomhaven going for that much. I mean, is this going to be 1.5 times the size of Gloomhaven or Frosthaven? Like, if it is, holy cow, okay, then, I take that back. But until I see that it is, I mean, that's massive. That's massive. And so this is one that it hasn't shown up anywhere for pre-order yet. The delivery date isn't scheduled until June 2021. So it might be, especially if this runs in Kickstarter time, 6 months before we even start to see pre-orders sort of come up around the time of June for maybe a July, August, September actual release. And so I don't really know where this one is going to go. I have to hope for my wallet's sake that it's going to be a lot less. It's going to be more around the Gloomhaven price for $80. Because I don't know of any game right now at an online publisher that sells for $120 for just the base game. I mean, the only thing, you're starting to get to like the new Descent version levels, where it's like going to be $160. So I don't know what to expect with this. That's why it's so high on my wish list, because of the potential and the fact that I think this would be a game that would be great for me and the kids and the wife to play together. But it was an easy pass because I just can't see that showing up unless they're only going to sell it through their own eShop online at that price. And if they are, then I'll either have to buy one there, buy one off of someone else secondhand, or trade for it for some expense item off my trade list. And if that's the case, then I'll either try to do that or, I'll miss out. Because this is an expensive game that I hope, honestly, is not going to remain that high. And time will tell, and we'll see whether I'm right, like it was with Sleeping Gods and Adventure Tactics, or if I'm wrong and it turns into, something else that stays exactly where it is. Either way, I've made my peace with it, and that's how I prefer. I can sleep easily at night, not having any regret either way. So there you go. There are 7 games that I passed on at Kickstarter and my reason and rationale, and it's just some thoughts for you out there as well when you're looking at Kickstarter pages in the future to consider now versus later. So thanks for watching. Throw me a sub. I'll see you next time. Stay classy.